Hey.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi.
Oh, it's good to see you guys.
Hi, Tracy.
Hey,
Hi.
Tracy. Thanks
Hey,
for
guys.
joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. I'll introduce you if that's okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
sure.
Okay. So, I'm Tracy Poffenroth Prado. I'm a podcast host and an adoptive mom of 2 kids with reactive attachment disorder. And today we've got Chris Prange-Morgan and her family. We've got Scott, her husband, and Jade and Kai, her kids, and of course, Chris. So, hey, everybody.
We don't have the cats here, though.
Oh, I'm not going to.
Just kidding.
I don't know if you need any more chaos, right?
They don't want to stick around anyway.
So, Chris, we're talking today because you have a new book coming out.
It does.
I do. It's right
Broken,
here.
Brave, and Bittersweet.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going through and proofing the book right now.
Final edits.
Yeah, the final edits. So it's the final countdown.
The final countdown. Well, and I know how hard you've worked and how far you've come to write this book. And so for me, it's just so exciting to see that to actually see it, number one, and to know that it's happening.
I know.
Right?
Well, and you've been part of this whole experience with me. I mean, we've been doing parent groups and connecting weekly for how long has it been?
I know. Well, it feels like I've known you longer than we know each other. We've known each other, but it's been, I don't know, has it been a couple of years?
At least like a year and a half, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate your camaraderie through this whole experience because you know the ins and the outs and the personal experience as well as the toil of just being a creator too, being a podcaster yourself. Like it can be headbanging sometimes. Like you think you hit record and you didn't, or you thought you were done and you're not, and then or you're interviewing people and then you're like whatever. But
yeah, it doesn't always go smoothly. It's a lot of trial and error.
Yeah.
So your book covers a lot of things, and I'm going to ask some questions about it, but I was just kind of going over your story and how your experience, you've had to navigate adoption, trauma, and not just one type of trauma, disability, chronic health issues. I mean, there's a lot going on. You've got a lot going on.
Yes.
Yeah. And one thing that stood out to me that I wanted to start with was this quote, and it says, "My son's therapist warned me that I was on the road to burnout, but I didn't believe him." What was happening? What does that mean?
Yeah. So we were seeing this therapist when the kids were really young still. And because I was a social worker in my previous career, I was always a doer. And everything, I just had it dialed in. I had my checklists. I knew what kinds of appointments I had to take the kids to. And at that time, Kai had a lot of therapies and things like that, but just like a lot of stuff going on. And I think the therapist that we were seeing just noticed something in me that like I was hypervigilant, and I didn't think that I was. How we women, we moms, we just kind of take things on and we just think, oh, that's just part of the role. All moms do this, right? And so he noticed. And do you remember that?
Oh yeah, very definitely.
Yeah.
But I remember she and I had conversations about, whether it was our kids or anybody else's. Like I work in special education. When you have young kids who have delays or behavior challenges or whatever, there's a saying: you hit it early and you hit it hard in terms of trying to make things better. So you put a ton of energy in right up front, which is absolutely what Chris is doing, because we believed that was the best course.
Yeah.
Right.
And he even looked at me one day and he said, I know you're thinking that if you're not on it 100% of the time, that he's going to slide back.
Yes.
Because, when Kai joined our family, and by the way, he's made amazing progress over the years.
Way to go, Kai.
Yeah, I mean, like he almost died, I mean, we'll go more into that. But I just felt like I had to be on all the time because I wanted to keep making headway. I wanted him to make headway. And, I talk in the book about how he would just kind of lay on the floor and he didn't want to engage with the world and just, I mean, you don't remember that, but those were such hard days.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and when your therapist was talking about burnout, and I know this just because I've lived a similar life, but it isn't just typical burnout, is it? Like, what was parenthood and parenting like for you? I mean, it's a whole other level of burnout.
Well, it was like this bone tiredness. Like, I mean, with a layer of denial over the top of it, because there are multiple layers. Like there was I was living in the suburbs and trying to prove that I was this happy mom and dealing with, 2 children that were transnationally adopted. And, trying to put on this face like our family was just like the typical family. So there was that. And I wasn't listening to like my gut that was saying, Chris, this is going to be different. It's going to feel different.
Right.
But, I didn't feel like I was prepared to, have those feelings. So I was kind of squelching those. In addition to just the tiredness of like always feeling like, when a child has such neglect from their early years and they come into your family and they are in this chronic state of hypervigilance all the time, scanning their environment and feeling like they don't want to be left. So they want you to be always aware that they're there. So they make a lot of noise or, and I'm not saying any of this is done
intentionally.
Or intentionally, but it gets into it's like an earworm of a song you can't stand that's always there. And you're like, that's the only thing I can really describe it.
If I could be kind of on the outside looking in a little bit for what she was going through. Years ago, she was on the Today Show, and there was another woman on the show too who had a book that she written called Mommy Burnout. I read a little bit of it, and the thing about it was, this was about mommy burnout for moms of kids who don't really have any issues.
Right. That's what I was trying to get to. Exactly.
What they're dealing with is societal pressure from either, keeping up with the Joneses,
right,
or the evil stepmother or mother-in-law or whatever, it's like
those typical expectations.
Yeah. But, Chris is coming at, Jade and Kai with the idea that maybe, well, not so much Jade, but definitely Kai, she was trying her damnedest to move him along quickly, knowing he had these significant delays.
Yeah.
And,
with kids, and we could talk a little bit more about, reactive attachment disorder as well, because it makes sense as I write in the book, how like we as these white parents, at least in our case, we went to China, looked nothing. I was probably the very first white person either one of my kids have ever seen, expecting that they're just supposed to be like welcoming me with open arms.
Sure.
And thinking that, it just felt off. And so for, I think Kai specifically, I think Jade kind of knew that, I think this is a family and this is supposed to be how it is. And I think she was kind of groomed better. I think she had better care also at her orphanage.
Okay.
Kai did not have the best care at his orphanage. So I was like the enemy from day one. And, from the moment he was kind of put in my arms, he fought me.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
I think something also with the difference between burnout of parents of kids that don't have special needs and parents of kids with RAD is the fact that they're doing all this work and they don't know if there's still that attachment issue. So all this work and you don't know if the child's actually going to reciprocate in the end, and it's not a very bright light at the end of the tunnel.
No
That's
guarantees for
great.
success, no matter how hard you work.
No guarantees for success, no matter how hard you work. Exactly. That's really well said, Jade. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, when we were getting prepared to do this interview, she made a comment before about how she thinks that other parents of special needs kids can probably relate, even if it's a different kind of special need, you know?
Exactly. And that's what I was trying to get to is the level of burnout. You know, when I read that your therapist warned you about burnout, this is burnout on a completely different level than like what you were saying, Scott, you know, not the typical expectations, typical parenting issues that most people have. You had much, much more going on. And what that burnout, where did it lead you?
So yeah,
The big question.
the big old question. Yeah, I ended up suffering a catastrophic fall and injury at my climbing gym. I was my son Kai had therapies in the morning, and I had to take him to some more appointments in the afternoon. And of course, I'm just thinking this is just normal, right? You know, I packed his bag and all his stuff. And at that point, he really wasn't even very vocal. And, you know, I had like Cheerios and Matchbox cars, and I put them on the floor of the climbing gym. And there was this brand new route that was there, and I wanted to climb it, and I was in a hurry, and I forgot to clip in to the auto belay, and I ended up falling, you know, like between like 28 and 30 feet. I don't know exactly. I just remember there was a quick draw that I tried to grab on my way down, but
20 to 30 feet. Yikes.
Yeah. And then ended up with a, you know, really screwing up my ankle, having to go through lots of, you know, limb salvage surgeries after that. I broke my pelvis. I broke my L1. L4, L5, a rib, a bit through my lip.
Your tailbone.
I totally forgot about it.
Oh, your
I broke my nose. I broke my tailbone. You know,
gosh.
but Kai was there too when that happened, and he didn't. He was. Do you remember what that was like?
Oh. Yeah, I remember like you on the floor.
She was on the floor.
Oh, which I think that's maybe that might be.
But you were pretty aware something bad had happened.
Yeah, and I just saw you in the shower, you know, and I was
Kind of.
Oh, he heard me cussing. Yeah, but he did
That's
see it
the part.
happening, which was a good thing,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But then the gym staff kind of took him off into a different room, and they kept an eye on him, and you know, as the ambulance came.
How old would Kai have been?
So you were
No,
you were
I
4. Remember, you were in 4K.
I think.
Yep. Yeah, he was in 4K at the time, or early childhood education.
Okay.
So yeah.
So you don't remember much about that. You just remember seeing it, Kai. I guess you're too young to really have any feelings about it, or do you remember anything else?
No.
No. Yeah. Pretty young.
Yeah. But Kai, I'm just curious too. Like, so some of the stuff that we were talking about, do you remember any of the feelings you had around that time in general? Like just that time, if you think back to when you were like 4?
I was like shocked.
You were shocked?
Yeah. I don't know.
Did it feel scary, Kai?
I know, like to see my mom hurt and injured on the floor.
Yeah. Oh, you know what was really interesting, and this is something I didn't bring this up in the book, but one of his therapists said that when I was in the hospital, he started to cry, which was for me, it
Unusual?
gave me hope. What's that?
Oh, yeah. Unusual, but it gave you hope. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's actually another little story. Chris was in the hospital, and this was 2, maybe 3 days later. Her parents came down. They live about an hour drive north of us. They came down to spend some time because I had to go to work and somebody had to watch the kids. So her dad was in the kitchen, and Kai, you could tell he was upset. He was on the edge of tears. He crawled up into your dad's lap.
Oh yeah.
Which was very unusual for him to look that vulnerable
Yeah.
and in need of comfort. and he crawled up into her dad's lap, like, please comfort me, kind of a thing. You
Wow.
could tell something was wrong. Something was really wrong.
And
Yeah.
and Kai, you sought out that comfort. Yeah. Which is unusual.
Yeah.
Off his lap, yeah.
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 Wow.
Yeah. But what's interesting about all of this is, like a person has a tendency to like wonder what would have happened if my accident hadn't happened, or, like how would life have unfolded had that, you know what I mean?
I do. I read something. You said you had no idea what you were getting into until everything came crashing down.
Yeah. Yeah. And I didn't know anything about self-care.
Oh, yeah.
Like it wasn't
Did you
even
know about self-care before your accident or like before kids?
not at all. In
Okay.
fact, so in the book, I talk about in chapter 1, I begin by saying that my favorite book was The Giving Tree growing up. And because I saw myself as like this interplay between the boy and the tree, and the fact that the tree kept they kept saying the tree was happy. During my childhood, I thought, wow, the tree really was happy. But I always ended the book thinking, well, gosh, that tree got ground to a stump and it's still happy. Well, it must be happy because it keeps giving, because that was just how I always had been.
Mm.
And so when my accident happened and finally I was it was very quiet, and I was in my hospital room and the sun was setting. I looked out the window and it was quiet, and I thought, this is going to like the first time I get to focus on myself. Like I had never focused on myself in my life before.
Wow.
You
You
know,
are in a hospital room and that's when you finally get the time. Wow.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, I went into helping professions.
Yeah.
Scott and I actually, and this comes up too, where we met over a glass of wine and bang bang shrimp
Couple glasses of wine.
at the Thunder Bay Grill, and we had the help, the fact that we were both chronic helpers. That was something
Yes.
we had in common. And we started talking about our jobs and, the fact that we were firstborn, and we liked what we did, well, and you're a helper too, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
It
And
was hard work, but it's rewarding.
it is. It is. But there's that fine line of when you give too much of yourself. And I think it's easy to do.
Mhm.
And maybe that happened in your family a bit too, right? We just keep persevering and keep looking for that, whatever it is, to help make things better.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe not finding it, like you were saying, Scott.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not such a success story.
Right.
Tell me about trying to be a normal family, but you're not. Why weren't you a normal family? I know we've kind of touched on it a bit. And then talk about, why you were trying to be, or how you were trying to be a normal family.
I'm gonna bring up an example that I believe it's in chapter 2. I was teaching swim lessons for a while when the kids. That was my mom job.
Yeah.
I got out of my career and I got to put the kids in Y care at the YMCA, and I taught swim lessons, and some of them were parent-child swim lessons. And I remembered really wanting to connect. Actually, I have a story regarding both of the kids. Really wanting to connect with Kai at the time, and he didn't want to like grab on and latch onto me. He kind of was like a sack of potatoes, and even in the water, he just really didn't want to you didn't want to connect, right? Do you remember that? Remember when I tried to teach you how to float on your back?
I
Do you remember the swim lessons at the Y?
well, yeah, like, she had me like, I want you back, hi, don't flip over, I want you back, like,
I know.
You remember
Yeah,
that?
belly to the
On your
sky.
back.
it's just,
And so when I would say belly to the sky, he would automatically just kind of do this then. Like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do belly to the sky. I'm going to sink,
Yeah.
So he laughed because, we put him in a class, and we were like, do you have a sea slug class? But anyway, I was watching these kids, like looking deeply into their parents, their mothers, most of the time, some dads, but their eyes, and like, grabbing them and being affectionate. And I was just like, I want that. I want to have that experience. And I'm feeling like the opposite. I'm feeling like my child does not like me. I feel like I repel him. And it was really, it really bothered me. And, but I kept squelching that down. And another small example regarding Jade, I remember, was when we were going to the was it Gymboree, we were working on attachment parenting. They tell you to do all this, these techniques and stuff.
Right.
Oh, you don't remember?
No.
Okay.
It's just a short amount of time. It was like a month or two.
Yeah, something like that. But anyway, and Jade was always like this independent little soul, spunky and cute and engaging, but I was just this other person. I mean, she was not quite as removed, she was at least kind of trying to engage with me a little bit, and it took some time. But I remember going to Gymboree and seeing this other child, and their nanny came to pick them up, the child was with the nanny, and the mother came to pick up the child, and the child didn't want to go with the mom. It wanted to stay with the nanny. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I'm trying so hard to attach to my daughter, and I think it's working. But that's the problem with attachment, is like, you want, the child to want to be with you. And, it's this kind of concept. I mean, and I think attachment is a spectrum too. I think that there are kids who are bio kids that can have attachment challenges.
Our therapist said there were a number of bio kids that he'd worked with that had attachment problems.
Yeah, there are a lot of reasons and a lot of different types. And then I think I agree with you, the spectrum of, how difficult or where they're at on that level, how easy or hard it is going to be for them to attach. Right.
Yeah. And I think that there's a tendency, like, I worry sometimes, like with the book, my biggest concern is that people are going to think that, that there's some blame, or that I'm, speaking negatively, about my children or whatever. And it's not, it's something that I think needs to be talked about. I think the attachment process is like, we're all so disconnected in society nowadays. And it starts when children are young.
Well, and it goes back to us being vulnerable too, as the parents, because we're in this isolated reality a lot of times where, in your world, how many neighbors and people, most families have typical kids, typical life situations, expectations. And when you're the one in the mix that doesn't, and it looks so different, it really is isolating. And if we don't talk about it, and I'm glad that you're bringing all this forward, because that was a question about how you are feeling about putting your family out there. But I think that if we don't, then the rest of us stay isolated in that reality all alone.
Yeah, totally. And I think this is also kind of where I'd like to kind of offer the kids a chance to talk about their experiences too, because I mean, this isn't just me. I mean, attachment is a two-way street, right?
Right.
And I actually have a story like later in the book where, Kai had more glaring attachment challenges early on, but then when we were on this vacation, our daughter ended up having some issues because.
Was this in Colorado?
Oh,
yes.
Yeah. Okay. Talk
That's
about that.
Do you feel comfortable?
Jade,
Oh, yeah.
your mom talks about an argument that you had in Colorado. Can you share what that was like for you?
Yeah, so some background was before my parents had gotten in a fight about paying for a trip out to Los Angeles. And it was a pretty big fight where my mom had to physically step away, and she ended up going to her parents' house like an hour away for the weekend. But at the time, it wasn't really clear when or how long she would be there, just because she did leave like in the middle of the fight. So like it was difficult to get that communication across for the timeline in which she would be gone. And I think that was really triggering for me. Just having an unknown amount of time, or like an absence of a parent for an unknown amount of time.
Yeah.
And so shortly after she got back, and they figured something out where we would take a smaller trip out to Colorado instead of California. But I was still holding a lot of resentment towards what had happened because I was triggered, and I didn't want to hang out with my family in Colorado because I was mad at my parents for letting it happen like that. So they thought I was having an attitude, and I got mad because I felt like they didn't understand me and understand my triggers.
And Jake, can you talk more about the triggers? Like, what do you mean? What was going on that you were being triggered? Like, what was happening?
Well, just the absence of a parent for an unknown amount of time. That's like really my birth mom leaving me. So, and it was a lot more subconscious triggering, where I was just feeling very dark in my head. But
Did it surprise you to feel like that?
yeah, because that's the closest to my trauma that I've ever gotten.
Yeah.
Oh,
I remember when we were.
I just want to point out what you just said. Sometimes people say things that are really profound, but Jade, what you just said about that's the closest you've ever gotten to your trauma in that moment.
Yeah.
I think that is really powerful, what you just said there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, because I remember we were hiking in the Flatirons, and it was like, oh, she's giving an attitude and whatever. But then all of a sudden she was like, so with some expletives, you left me, Mom, you left me. Do you know how hard it is? I've been left before, and like a lot worse than that. And we were both in each other's faces, and Scott,
yes, they were.
And Scott was like, "Oh, you guys," and people were hiking, past us, and
it was like we were at home and nobody else was around. They were just throwing it out there.
We were on vacation. We don't have to see those people again.
Exactly.
I know.
Well, and that might have been, I mean, this is in a twisted way, but or maybe a twisted thing to point out. But for your mom, Jade, I think that might have been a very connecting moment for her to know that you were so worried about that. It mattered to you that she wasn't there.
Yeah.
Would you say that, Chris? Was that?
Yeah, because we cried and we hugged each other, and I mean, I'm almost getting choked up thinking about it right now because, that's the thing. I haven't lived through their loss, and so for me to be constantly made aware of those things, it's like I can't imagine what that would be like to be like left as an infant. I mean, that wasn't my experience, and so to keep being reminded, and it's not like it's something that either Jade or Kai are even have any control of,
right?
Because things happen, and I'm not even aware of it some of the time. And
well, it's so deep, right? It's almost at that cellular level. And I think, Jade, that's what you were saying, is that you didn't even know. Sometimes you don't know, but it's just in there. And when something does trigger it to come out, boom, there it is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what about you, Kai? Your mom talks a lot about what it was like for you in the orphanage. What is that like when she brings that up?
I don't know, kind of like sad, peaceful.
Sad?
Yeah. That is, I don't know, just being left alone.
So
you were left alone.
Remember when we asked you to read through the manuscript over? So before I submitted my manuscript, I asked the kids if they wanted to change their names or make some changes, and Kai
read it, right? And they read it.
Yep, he read the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so tell us what you said or what you thought.
I say, well, yeah, it's honest. It's truth, meaningful. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
You said something about like the truthfulness of it. While it's not something that you want to hear, it's the truth, and sometimes the truth hurts.
And it's better overall anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I remember he cried a little as he talked about forgetting the orphanage experience, like
Yeah.
because he was like, I forget about that, but I've come so far, and I'm proud.
Proud. Well, and I've got something written here about you said that when you had a conversation whether or not you should change your names, you said you wanted to be a real person. So you wanted it to be real, have your real name there and to make it feel real. Is that right, Kai?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why? What is it about that? What?
I don't know. It's just like and it shows that like it's actually me. You know, it's not just a made up person.
Yeah,
Right. It's not some made up person. This is you.
Does it seem more powerful, do you think, as a person's reading mom's book? The fact that that's your name, that's who you are. Does that seem more powerful in a way?
Yeah. It's like yeah, and like shows a real deal.
a real deal. Yeah. Well, because I mean,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
I was just thinking, Kai, what came to my mind is, was there a time that you didn't feel real?
Well, like the time like when we were there, like well,
Did you feel real when you were in the orphanage, or do you remember those times, or did that, or have you felt like you're kind of hiding behind a different?
well, probably like the time where mom was like at home taking care of me, like you know, she kind of have holding time, and like I just walked around, I peed on her.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You peed on your, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where when we think that, he's come a long way, like, I mean, there were some really bad things that happened when he was little because he just did not want to be close to me. But what ended up happening was he bonded with Scott more easily because Scott was a male,
Right. Yeah.
and I had to just kind of accept that that was going to be how it would be because Kai really needed to connect with somebody, and that was okay, and I had to take a long range kind of approach with it and just kind of accept that this is not going to feel like what we were expecting.
And that's hard as a mom.
It is. And well, and you've been there too, right?
Yeah, I have. I know. And that's why I feel, I mean, it's so hard when you have these expectations of what you expect life is going to be like as a parent, as a mom, as a couple, as a family.
Right.
And it's none of those. And I think it's, your book, Broken, Brave, and Bittersweet. I think that's maybe a brave moment is where, you're putting your child ahead of your own needs and just seeing what he really needs and giving that to him, as hard as that must have been for you.
Yeah. And, we had some marital issues over the years, and
yeah. I mean,
I mean, like,
it's hard.
We had some brutal arguments.
Yeah.
The kids like leave and go to their bedrooms and shut the door.
The time before Colorado.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was pretty
Yeah,
ugly.
right.
That
Yeah.
was pretty ugly.
Yeah, because it had been a horrible summer. I mean, we lost our cat died. Scott's mom was in the hospital. My dad was in the hospital. Like, there's all this. I broke a tooth.
We both had that issue. We were toothless together for a while.
I have a brother of mine who listened to all this tale of woe about her family. He said, "Boy, it's been the real bummer summer for you guys."
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah, and we had always, like, Scott and I, again, we connected through our sense of adventure. Like that was where we, we found our joy, and we still do. And we got our kids into that. I mean, that's a big part of the book as well, is, we find our joy through, engaging in the outdoors and being adventurous and all that kind of
you
stuff.
guys do.
Well, you're a climber. What do you mean?
No.
Oh yeah, she's a bug magnet.
Me, Kai, and Krebs, there can be mosquitoes around, and we get maybe a bit here and there, but no big deal. She's a freaking mosquito magnet, and she gets welts, like huge welts.
Oh,
Yeah.
No wonder she doesn't like being outside.
yeah.
Yeah.
Really sorry, distracted.
No, you're good.
It's all
And
part of the story.
Scott, we've been talking about everybody else. What has this experience been like for you? I mean, trying to hold it all together, Chris's accident, and then having this, family to keep together, yourself to keep together.
Yeah.
Feelings in this whole story, this experience.
There's like two bookends to all of this. The one is when Chris fell, and it was very obvious that she was going to have to, take a long time to recover.
Mm-hmm.
And I still needed to be at my job, but I had needed to be a parent to these kids. I still had to they were kind of too small, really, to, wash dishes and do laundry. And
They learned though.
They learned much earlier than most kids, let me tell you. But I mean, there was all those things that needed to be done.
Yeah.
And I realized at that point, whatever I wanted, whatever I felt about things, kind of didn't matter at that time.
Yeah.
That my wife had needs, my kids had needs, and I mean, relatively speaking, I was fine, health wise and all that, and I had a secure job. I just had to kind of get through each day as best I could for the foreseeable future. Well, the other bookend is, after trying so hard for so long to keep it together and be the rock, because we had so much emotional turmoil going on, I did eventually have panic attacks.
Did you?
I did. I was driving to work one day, and I had most people who get panic attacks for the first time will say it was like having a heart attack. That's what they thought was happening. And I totally understand that. But having heard other people's stories and being, in the psychology field, okay, my heart's beating out of my chest, I'm getting dizzy, whatever. And I'm like, I pulled over and I'm okay, is this a panic attack or is this a heart attack? And I had to sit there, wait for a while. Eventually I realized it was a panic attack, but it wasn't going away. Yeah. So I did like deep breathing all the way, like 20-minute, finished the 20-minute drive to work. And Chris ended up having me take off for work the next day, and I went in for a bunch of heart tests, and it was all fine. And, my heart was fine. So clearly it was panic attacks, but
yeah,
I didn't ever want to go through that again.
No.
And so I had to make some mental adjustments. I was trying to carry a lot of responsibility on my back too, and I had a lot of colleagues in education say, I'd catch them up with how everything was going for the family, but they'd say, but how are you doing, Scott? What are you doing for yourself? I'd be like, not much, and it caught up with me.
Yeah. Well, it's hard when you're in crisis like that and all the time. And, Chris was mentioning too, that not only do you have your family situation that you're dealing with, but then all the background stuff, parents sick, cats dying, other stuff on top of this already monumental.
Oh, my job situation, it was a secure job. I wasn't going to get fired or anything, but there was still a lot of high expectations on me at work.
Right.
And I had to kind of turn off my feelings about my family to focus on what I needed to do at work. And because I just had to shift the stress.
Yeah. Survival, which is really all about, right?
Yeah.
Our kids are in survival mode. And
there's one other little thing I wanted to add. It's funny. Like, I think in metaphors a lot because it kind of helps me understand things. So like if you're in a dark place, your life is not going well, and you might look into the future, like where is this all going? And if you continue to see a dark future, that's probably going to lead to some serious depression or whatever. But I was more like in a tunnel. I felt like I saw light at the end of the tunnel, but it was really far off. And I felt like there's an end to this. It's going to get better. And I can't say when it's going to get better, but I just have to hang in there until it does
Right.
get to that other end of the tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that was one of the things that kind of helped me hang on. Is I believe there was light at the end of the tunnel, but it was really far off.
Yeah.
And we're actually in that point where we're starting to see the light. I mean,
I would agree.
yeah, I mean,
would
Kai's
agree.
16. He's got a good job. He just came home from work,
Did boss
actually.
yell at you?
Yeah, you know, my about fight. And I almost not fight.
Wow.
He yells at me.
No.
Wait, did
Okay.
he yell at you tonight?
No, he won't.
Jade's going to college in the fall. I mean, there are some days I just look back and I just am like,
How did we make it?
we're still
Well, I
here.
bet you sometimes you didn't think you were going to.
I
said,
know.
You said in the book that you like hoped that our family would be the exception. Like when we went to Dr. whatever his name is in Virginia.
Yeah.
He was talking about how these families become ruined, and you had this hope that we would be the exception, but you also knew that having that hope was most likely unrealistic. But
No guarantees.
Right. No guarantees, but you have to hold on to something.
You do.
Right.
The
Yeah.
alternative is not good, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, just sitting here, I love looking at the four of you all on this interview together, and that you've both read your mom's book, and it's just been an entire shared family experience. Chris, what kind of propelled you to write this book, and what was that process like for you?
You know, that's an interesting question. I've always had the idea of writing. I mean, I've always been kind of driven to write. But I think I wanted to be able to share my story so that I could give others a sense of hope. Other people that, maybe adopted families or people with, disabilities or people who are struggling. Because again, it goes back to the idea that, attachment is a continuum. Disability is a continuum. Struggle has this continuum. And, I look at my story or our story, and I work in a rehab hospital, and I see patients with way worse circumstances than I have. I was part of this family advisory committee at Children's Hospital back when the kids were little. Even after my accident, I went in my little knee scooter, and I met other moms with, kids with severe medical needs, some with multiple kids with genetic anomalies, and and that is hard, and I think I wish our systems supported families that struggle better. I feel like we're in our little silos, and we're afraid to talk about how we struggle. And and I still, even sharing this story or our story, even in this book, I'm kind of getting ready for to experience judgment or whatever, because I feel like sometimes women, it's mostly women, I feel like women can be momzillas sometimes and say, well, it's like being in a checkout lane, and the kid is, having a hissy fit, and you're like, oh, can't that mom keep that kid under control?
Hey, we've all done it. We've all
I know, we've all done it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a lot more compassion now because of
Yes.
what we've been through. In fact, there was a kid. I was in Target the other day, and this mother had this child that was just going crazy, and I had a bottle of wine in my cart, and I actually went up to her and I was like,
I'm surprised it was only one.
Yeah, I only had one. I know I should have had more. But I was like, you want to take this bottle with you? And she just kind of laughed, like, thanks for understanding. I said, I've been
Did
there.
she take it?
No, she didn't. She just laughed. She gave me this smile, like, thanks for at least knowing how it is.
Right.
But
Well, that connection, which you also mentioned in your book about being so important. Talk about that, the importance of connection, or how that's helped you, or how you feel it can help others.
yeah, well, so you and I have been connecting with other moms with kids with reactive attachment disorder, and and that's been a lifesaver for so many of us, just
Right.
to know that we're not alone, and you could talk about your experiences, and then you can finish each other's sentences because what one another are going through. The same thing is happening with folks in like the rehabilitation population. I see amputees all the time, who I just saw one yesterday that was so, thankful to ask me questions about, what to expect with the process of limb loss.
Oh, wow.
Right. And and I would expect too that, the kids as they get older too. I mean, that's the one thing that's always a question in the back of my mind is like, like Jade was saying, she's applying for colleges right now.
Oh, no.
Or not colleges, I'm sorry, dorms. And the kids who are reaching out to her are Asian, right?
No.
Hey, yeah, right.
I just don't want to get stuck in a group of Asians. Like, I want to expand my friend.
You mean like Chinese nationals that are from China, or
Oh, they're
just
all from South Korea.
wow?
Wait, I have nothing against Asians.
Of course you don't.
I just don't want to get stuck in like that group.
Right. You have a broader outlook. You want to meet
Yes.
anybody and everybody. Sure.
Yeah. Yes, I do.
Yeah. But, I mean, to find your people, however that is, like, I think it's important to find who you connect with.
Yeah. Especially in something where it's hard to be vulnerable, right? And it's hard to be very open about, I think, putting your story out there and opening that door for people is huge. And you cover so many areas. It's not just about adoption or kids with reactive attachment disorder or disability and pain and trauma. I mean, it's all of that. And yeah, I'm so grateful that you're sharing it, everybody.
Can I throw out some comment here? It's like one thing I think is really great about Chris's story is her being very forthright about the difficult things.
Right.
And I think
just out. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's something she's been complimented on by many other ladies who I think, similar to Chris, they understand that a lot of women feel that a lot of societal pressure to always present that things are fine and, and not acknowledge the difficult things.
Hold it together.
Yeah. And it's like, we have been so honest with the kids about their circumstances from, developmentally appropriate, in a way they can understand it. But we never shied away from talking about adoption. We never shied away from talking about the fact that they're Asian or Caucasian. Chris and I live our lives very honestly, and I don't think there's anything we have to be ashamed of or embarrassed of. I mean, I think we've done a pretty damn good job, and I'm pretty proud of the work that we've done and the way the kids have turned out. So I don't think this is hard at all. I think this is great that, Chris has been able to tell not just her story, but our family story in a very honest way.
Well, and I think of I don't know where I saw this, but it was about the dance floor. You know how there's that one person who gets right out there and they're up on the dance floor, and it only takes it's only a matter of time before then another person sneaks out onto that dance floor dancing, and then more people follow and follow and follow. And that's what I think about this situation too. Is Chris, you're the first person out on that dance floor. Making it comfortable for everybody to join in and share about their story and maybe feel a little more comfortable and knowing that people are out there. You've given some good advice. Do you have any other advice for families? Any of you? Jade, Kai, Mom, Dad?
I think that'd be great to hear because
I know we do.
What do you think that Mom and I, or us as a family, have done pretty well that maybe other families could benefit from doing?
Respect.
Okay.
I mean,
we have boundaries and limits.
Yes.
well, like
Boundaries and limits.
reinforce the rules.
We
We
enforce
enforce
the
the
rules.
rules. Yeah.
Like you said, a clean family most of the time.
Clean.
Other than the trips, but yeah.
Okay.
Trips.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I think the honesty that you were mentioning earlier is really important, especially in adoptive families, but it can be in any family as well, because that gives the best communication and allows for opportunity for deeper discussion as well.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I think so. And, and I think that we have to get rid of this idea that, there's any kind of perfect family, like.
Oh,
we are
yeah.
Say that again.
We are. You said that? Wait a second.
We all are perfect.
Well, I mean, like
Perfectly
seriously,
imperfect.
I think that we're all works in progress, Like, I mean, I love these three so much.
The furry ones.
Even though they drive me crazy sometimes.
Yeah.
Well,
Furry ones,
and the-
of course.
Yeah.
the furry ones, yeah, they're the best.
Well, and I think it's good to know too that you don't always have to understand in order to still be supportive, right? And to help each other and help other families that you see that are struggling, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, so when-
that's a good point. Really good
Yeah.
point.
When Chris and I would have our blistering arguments periodically, you just build up of tension, and or something will happen, and you have a disagreement, and you air your grievances and your point of view. I mean, personally, I never thought I was right in like any ultimate sense. I had my point of view, certainly, and Chris had hers, and after cooling off, then we'd come together and talk, and we'd be able to understand each other a little better and then move on. And I thought that was really important that she and I worked through those really tough times, because then we came out of it stronger. We came out of it better for the kids,
Yeah.
Kids, yeah.
I
Yeah.
think
But-
that
It's for the family, all of you. Mhm.
Yeah.
I think that also that concept of you don't have to understand to be able to support is also like super important with the parent relationship with their children, because like from my perspective, of course I wish that they understood exactly what it's like to have those darker memories. It's kind of hard to explain, but like that darker cloud hanging over you, like the fact that your mom did abandon you, but like I still appreciate the support that they do provide for me, that it doesn't, in the end, it doesn't really matter if they fully understand or not, as long as you're able to support each other.
I love that, Jade. I don't think there's any better way to end this interview.
Yeah.
What you just said is everything. Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes you won't understand.
Or ever.
Or
Right.
yeah.
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 Well, it's just amazing. Thank you. Is there anything that we've missed that anybody feels they'd like to share? I just think
Anything you think that
Final
We need
thoughts? Final thoughts?
final thoughts? No.
there are so many layers,
Yeah.
like to this whole experience, and you just keep putting one foot in the other, whether it's a real foot or a prosthetic foot.
Right? Yeah, you've got one of each.
Yes, I mean, and sometimes I have to laugh because I'll be like, Kai, can you go get me my leg? Or
I mean, she puts a leg in her alligator mouth.
I saw the leg in the alligator mouth. I did. That was a good
Yeah.
picture.
That's right.
Gotta have a little-
That's funny.
yeah, we've had fun Halloween costumes.
Right.
We
Oh,
were all
yeah.
pirates one year.
Arr.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we were a bunch of zombies, and that was something
Right.
else.
Yeah.
Yeah, Scott had like a chainsaw, and I had a leg.
A fake plastic foot that I
Yeah,
cut off.
right.
That's great.
Yeah,
Great.
Yeah.
Tracy, thank you so much
Yeah.
for helping us out and interviewing us.
Yeah. I'm so
well, I
glad.
want to put in a plug for your podcast too, because Rad Talk with Tracy. Like, I mean, you've helped so many moms and families and adoptees understand the attachment continuum.
Right. Yep. Just giving everybody a voice. Right. I think it's like your book, similar. It's just The more that we put it out there and let people share their stories in a safe place,
Mhm.
and that's
Yeah.
how we heal, right?
Mhm.
It is
It
just
is how we heal.
It
Yeah.
is, yeah. But it's just so nice seeing the four of you here. I mean, I've been part of your journey for some time, not all of it,
Mhm.
but you've caught me up on the parts I missed. And even in these couple of years to see the four of you here together, I'm just so glad you're sharing your story. And I really encourage everybody to pick up Chris's book.
Wanna pick it up one more time?
Oh yeah. So yeah, Broken, Brave, and
Oh, yeah.
Bittersweet. It's right here. Yeah, it goes live on May 10th. I'm going to encourage everyone to order it. I think between 1 and 2 Central Standard Time, because
Do you know the time?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Date.
What's that?
What date? When does it get released?
May 10th.
May 10th.
Yep. May 10th. Yeah, and
People can pre-order.
people can pre-order.
Okay.
I'm still working out those details.
Go to your website,
Go to my website, chrisprange-morgan.com.
Yeah.
But I will post a link to the book. It will be on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all those good places. And yeah, and we'll look forward to chatting more. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else. That's Finnegan.
Going along with like what we were saying before, this was like only like scratching the surface,
I would say
and
there's a lot more.
there is so much more to read about our family's journey in the book, which is another reason you should get it.
Oh, this is your
I know. This is just the teaser, isn't it, Jade? Yeah. There's no way we'll cover everything in the book for sure, but it's a start, and people now can go. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Tracy, for doing this. I appreciate it, and I've so appreciated your friendship.
Me too.
These times,
right?
Best friends forever.
That's right.
BFFs.
Yeah, I love it.
All right,
guys,
Tracy.
thanks for sharing, Jade and Kai too. That was really brave of you, and appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Good seeing you. Take care. Go
good
get
seeing you too.
Yeah.
Bye.
Good night.